Segment 1. The factory floor. The noise hit you before you even walked through the gates. Longbridge, Lucas, Dunlop, BSA. Didn't matter which one. They all had that same bone-deep roar you felt in your chest before your ears fully registered it. Metal presses slamming every few seconds. Assembly lines rattling. Somebody always shouting something you couldn't quite make out over the machinery. You clocked in at 7, stood at your station, and did the same task hundreds of times until the tea break bell rang at 10. Those 15 minutes mattered more than they should have. The only time you could sit down, light a cigarette, and actually hear the bloke next to you talk. Most took a flask from home because the canteen tea was weak and cost money. Wages were decent if you stuck with it. Enough to put a deposit on a house in Northfield or Longbridge if you saved carefully and didn't drink it all on Friday. Overtime was offered most weeks, and most took it because Christmas was expensive and kids needed shoes. The camaraderie was real, but unspoken. You knew the man on your left better than your own cousins because you spent more waking hours next to him than anyone else. When someone's kid was born or their mum died, you all knew within an hour. The shop steward made sure of that. By the late 60s, automation was creeping in. Fewer hands needed on certain lines. Nobody said it out loud yet, but you could feel it. The way management started timing everything tighter, the way certain sections got quieter as machines took over. Still, in 1969, if you had factory work in Birmingham, you had security. That's what people thought anyway. Segment 2. The smell and haze. London fog gets all the attention in documentaries, but Birmingham's haze was industrial, not weather. The air didn't just look dirty. It was dirty, and everyone accepted it because complaining wouldn't change anything. You could see the pollen of industry settling on every surface, and by the end of a week, your windowsills wore a gray film that wiped off on your finger like graphite. The smells shifted depending on which way the wind blew. Rubber from Dunlop, oil and metal shavings from the car plants, coal smoke from thousands of chimneys, both factory and domestic, because central heating was still rare and most homes burned something to stay warm. Your lungs adjusted. You coughed more in winter when the smog thickened, but so did everyone else, so it seemed normal. Kids played in streets where the air tasted faintly of copper if you breathed through your mouth. Washing hung on lines came back in speckled with soot if you left it out too long, which is why most women timed laundry around the weather and the factory shift changes when emissions were heaviest. The Clean Air Acts had started in 1956 after London's Great Smog, aiming to reduce coal burning in urban areas, but enforcement was patchy, and Birmingham's factories kept operating at full capacity through the decade because production mattered more than air quality. And nobody with decision-making power lived downwind of Saltley or Aston anyway. A shirt collar turned gray by lunchtime. Segment 3. Living in a back-to-back. Back-to-backs weren't slums in the way Victorian courts were slums, but they weren't far off, and thousands of Birmingham families still lived in them at the start of the 1960s, even though the council had been condemning them for decades. You shared walls on 3 sides. Sometimes all 4 if you were in the middle of a terrace, which meant you heard Mrs. Next Door coughing at night, heard arguments through brick that might as well have been cardboard, heard everything whether you wanted to or not. Privacy was a concept, not a reality. Most had no bathroom. None. You bathed in a tin tub in the kitchen, water heated on the stove or in the copper if you had one, and everyone took turns. Kids first because the water stayed warmest, then adults, then whoever drew the short straw got the lukewarm gray dregs at the end. The toilet sat outside in a shared yard, sometimes serving 2 or 3 families, which meant winter trips in the cold and summer trips holding your breath. And you got used to it the same way you got used to damp walls and windows that never quite shut properly. The streets were tight, narrow. You knew everyone's business because there was no avoiding it. Who was behind on rent, whose husband drank too much, which kid had nicked something from the corner shop, all of it circulated faster than the morning milk delivery. Some people loved that closeness. Others suffocated under it, though neither group had much choice until slum clearance programs started emptying whole blocks in the mid-60s, relocating families to new estates in Castle Vale or Chelmsley Wood, where the houses had bathrooms and the streets felt empty by comparison. By 1969, entire neighborhoods in Ladywood and Neshells had been leveled. Segment 4, Saturday at the football. You stood in the same spot every match. Not assigned, just understood. The Holte End at Villa Park or the Tilton Road at St. Andrews. Your section, your mates, same routine every other Saturday. The terraces were concrete steps with crush barriers spaced too far apart to do much good when the crowd surged forward after a goal. No seats, pure standing. You paid your shilling or two at the turnstile, pushed through, and found your place among thousands doing exactly the same thing. The smell hit in layers. Cigarette smoke first, then beer, because plenty had started drinking at noon and kept going. Sweat when it was warm, wet wool when it rained. The noise when Villa or Blues scored was physical. A roar that moved through your chest and pushed the air out of the terraces like a shock wave. People jumped, crushed forward, lifted off their feet sometimes if they were small or unlucky. The barriers bent but rarely broke, which was the main safety feature anyone relied on. Violence happened outside more than in. Rival fans clashing on side streets, broken bottles, police on horses breaking it up. The trains afterward were tense if you'd lost and dangerous if you'd won against the wrong team. Some families brought kids as young as 7 or 8, figuring they'd learn to handle themselves in a crowd. It was tribal in a way modern football isn't allowed to be anymore. And honestly, that edge made it mean something, though maybe not as much as people claim now. Segment 5, the Bull Ring before the rebuild. And people act like the old Bull Ring was some kind of paradise, but the nostalgia forgets how chaotic it actually was, especially on wet Saturdays when the outdoor market turned into mud and trampled cabbage leaves. Traders shouted prices. 2 bob for 3, love. Voices layering until it became one constant roar you stopped hearing individually. The smells mapped the place. Fish at one end, flowers near the church, fruit going soft under tarpaulins. The covered market was better. Victorian iron columns, leaking roof, permanent stalls selling fabric and second-hand tools. At least it stayed mostly dry. The system worked because everyone knew the unspoken rules about haggling and which traders would shortchange you. Then 1964 arrived. Demolition started. The new concrete center opened with escalators and clean floors, and within a year, everyone complained it had no soul, conveniently forgetting the old market also had rats. The last outdoor trader packed up on a Tuesday morning, loading unsold stock into a van older than the stalls themselves. Segment 6, Handsworth and Sparkbrook. Handsworth wasn't some immigration ghetto. It was where new arrivals could actually find rooms when the rest of Birmingham wouldn't rent to them. Caribbean workers came for factory jobs at Dunlop, GEC, and the foundries in the late 50s and early 60s, responding to recruitment campaigns that promised work and decent wages, and they arrived to no Irish, no blacks, no dogs signs in windows across Balsall Heath, Sparkbrook, and Astorn, which meant entire streets were off-limits no matter how much deposit money you had. Boarding houses in Handsworth and Lozells filled quickly. Multiple families sharing kitchens, shift workers sleeping in beds still warm from the previous occupant. Rents were higher than white tenants paid for better houses, but landlords knew desperation when they saw it. Caribbean social clubs opened on Soho Road and Villa Road, places to drink, play dominoes, hear music from home, exist without hostility for a few hours. The Locomotion Club, the Habanero. Integration happened in factories where you worked next to someone for 8 hours, whether you liked them or not, and slowly, very slowly, some streets mixed, some pubs opened their doors, though plenty didn't through the entire decade. Enoch Powell gave his Rivers of Blood speech in Birmingham in 1968. That tells you how tense it still was. Segment 7, Pubs and Drinking Culture. And the pub wasn't optional. It was where you went because home had 3 kids, no heating upstairs, and your wife's mum visiting for the week. Mitchells and Butlers owned half the corner pubs in Birmingham. The Barton's Arms, the Vine, the Lamp Tavern, all wet only, which meant beer and spirits, but no food beyond maybe a pork scratching if you were lucky. The Vault was men only, always. Women drank in the lounge if they came at all, which most didn't unless it was Saturday night or someone's birthday. Friday was payday, wages in cash, first pint by 6. Working men's clubs were cheaper, but you had to be a member, and the committees ran them like small kingdoms with strict rules about guests, dress codes, and who got served first. Some had snooker tables. Some had entertainment on weekends. A comedian, a singer doing Sinatra covers badly. The ale was always a penny or 2 cheaper than the pub, which mattered when you were stretching a week's wages. Licensing laws shut everything at 10:30 sharp. No extensions. No lingering. The bell rang. You drank up and you left, which is why the chip shop queues at 10:45 stretched down the street every night. By 1969, some younger people were pushing for reform. Segment 8, Getting Around the City. Getting around Birmingham wasn't the nightmare people claim now. It was slower, sure, but most people didn't cross the city daily anyway because work, shops, and family all sat within a mile or 2 of home. The blue and cream West Midlands PTE buses ran frequently enough on major routes, though the outer circle, the 11A and 11C circling the entire city, took nearly 2 hours to complete if you stayed on the whole way, which nobody did unless they'd missed their stop and fallen asleep. Trams had already gone by 1953, but bits of track still poked through tarmac on certain roads, catching bike wheels if you weren't careful. The inner ring road was being carved through neighborhoods piece by piece: Masshouse Circus, St. Chad's, Lancaster Circus, whole streets vanishing under concrete flyovers that promised to solve congestion, but mostly just moved it somewhere else. Walking was common. Buses cost money. A tuppence fare added up over a week when wages were tight. When a family finally got a car, usually a used Austin or Morris, it changed everything, not because of speed, but because Sundays suddenly meant trips to Sutton Park or the Lickey Hills instead of sitting indoors. Though where everyone parked once car ownership spread is anyone's guess, because most terraced streets barely fit 2 vehicles side by side, so did people just double park and hope.